Thank you kindly, everyone. I trust I can share my screen.
Yes, it's perfect.
Oh, good. I think I can. Okay. I probably could actually run it as a presentation. I just have to organize my screen a little bit. So thank you kindly for your introduction of me and also of my career. Just trying to get it right. So, as indicated in the introduction, I would like to talk to you about my experiences with international projects and the reasons why I engage in these projects in teacher education, and also would like to share with you the challenges that this presents. And I will use my work with Cambodia as an example. It is my newest project. So if I stumble, then you should rejoice because then you have a proof that even if you're at it for 30 years, you still can stumble on things, right? So none of us is perfect. So these are the questions with which I want, around which I created my presentation today. Why have international projects? What do you expect from those? And how to find trustworthy collaborators. Right, so these are the questions that if I were a person, myself, I ask when I want to engage in international projects, but also I would encourage you to ask of yourself, because any engagement is takes a lot of work, more than I ever expected. Actually, when I'm working, normally my PhD students do the dirty work for me. They go to schools or they train teachers overseas or in their own institutions, and that's easier for me because all I have to do is to function as a mentor. However, the project in Cambodia is very different. I am actually teaching, and that's very interesting, and also just getting there took quite a lot of work. So engaging in international projects might be benefiting everyone, but not necessarily. It's extremely time consuming, may be quite challenging, might be disappointing. So knowing answers to these questions would help. So you may think of a question one, why have international projects, as being sort of obvious, or yes, we will learn from someone else. But, and I don't want to make things more complicated, but because I'm at the stage of my life and of my career that I can pass on to you, not where I'm going, but more or less where I had been and how it impacts now on my further engagement, I would like to tell you that writing for yourself a list of items. What is it that you mean when you suggest that if you engage in an international project, you will learn something? What does that mean? You write a list. Then you wonder to yourself, is this a draft or is this the final product of your thinking? Very often our first answers are just a draft, just a reaction. They're not necessarily thought through responses. Where did you get these expectations from that underpin your idea that it would be a good thing to engage in an international project, that you will learn something? What does it mean to learn something? Well, maybe I'll get a research paper. That's irrelevant. One research paper is not going to make your career, not today. In Vietnam or Cambodia, Maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, one paper could maybe give you a good promotion. Today, no. You need more than the concept of I will learn something from this needs to be really unpacked or broken down into more goals. And these goals need to be reflected. And to reflect, you need to wonder, where did you get these ideas from? Do you understand what they mean? And when you don't understand what they mean, then you need to interrogate yourself. And dare I say, we need to read with a critical eye to think to ourselves, are we repeating what other people say and don't understand really what that means? Or are we saying the things, are we drafting down answers that we actually understand? These are important things, because when I will tell you today about my project in Cambodia, I have to tell you that I'm very surprised that this project, first of all, went ahead. I'm surprised that it is going, still going. I'm surprised that people actually engage in the task of the project. You would think if you did a project with me or maybe with Professor Ania Lian or any other mentor of yours that you might actually respect, that it will be smooth, you will love it, and you will get to the next nirvana stage. Nothing like this happens. It's actually quite a nightmare. Therefore, finding trustworthy collaborators is extremely critical, because it is the trust that carries you through the project, not the knowledge of the mentor, not the knowledge that the mentor holds. So I might have 30 papers, 300 papers, but international projects create a lot of friction, because there is a clash of cultures. Inevitably, language itself presents cultural issues, but language doesn't refer to itself. It refers to practices, to ways of thinking, to the way we do things at the university, or to the way we do things in school, to the way we frame things. Why are you changing the way we do things? We're comfortable. We're really good at it, Ania. Actually, we're very good at it. Right? So when you get to and look, when I was 30, I often tell this story. I thought I was the best teacher of German. I used to teach German. It's not my language, but I learned it at university, so I was teaching it. I thought I was just the best. My students told me I was the best, but I wasn't. Thank God I had this capacity that when I met people who were interesting, and they didn't assess my teaching, but asked questions. And I used those questions to look at myself, to try new things, and then reflect on what I used to do and what I do today. And that helped me to change practices and grow and be smarter. So not being married to yourself from when you were 30 or 20, it's extremely critical, because once you get married to a particular identity that you are as a teacher, there is no progress. That's it, you're done. And you only need 3 or 4 people who will tell you you're fantastic, and no change will happen. Should we change? Well, that's another question I will ask in my next slide. But to summarize, it's the trust that carries the project, not necessarily the belief that this person is smart, because a person you collaborate with, or a team from another university you collaborate with, yes, you may believe they're smart, but they will be so different that unless there is a foundation of trust, yes, the project may not actually succeed or go forward too well. So why have international projects? I have some concerns. As you know, I have a pretty good experience as a reviewer of papers, as a reviewer of conference papers, as an editor. And I would like to share with you some of my concerns. Sometimes I have to admit, with my left or right hand on my heart, that I do allow papers to be published as a reviewer, I would say the paper would have to be really bad that I would not pass. But if they are relatively okay, I will pass them. But I still, inside of me, I think that we're running in circles. We're really running in circles. And if you look at the terminology that we're using nowadays and maybe the thoughts that are underneath, I often think that we haven't moved since when I was 20 and when I was learning about second language teaching. English, French, German, you name it, Chinese. So my first concern is, therefore, research papers reflect limited scope of interdisciplinary evidence. It's just same old, vocabulary, grammar, vocabulary, attitudes, motivation, what else is that? The same thing, anxiety. Literally, you pick up any journal from 1970s, 50 years ago, same topics. You would think that if for 50 years the entire globe was thinking about grammar, we would have an answer. But if you feel as a researcher or as a practicing teacher that we don't have an answer, then maybe the question is wrong. So the only way you can find out about it is by looking at the question from different angles. It's called interdisciplinary study. Interdisciplinary study is not to make us sick, it's to make us, or it's not also too difficult. There is a lot of first-class researchers in neuroscience, in psychology, in cognitive sciences, whatever fancy you, in chemistry. I mean, I even look into chemistry for analogies or for lack of thereof, that communicate their research ideas very clearly. They pretty much can tell the difference between the PhD students and the common folk like us. So when they work with the PhD students, obviously people like V.S. Ramachandran, or you name some people that you know who are in those disciplines, obviously they talk professional talk. But when they give public lectures, they make these presentations easy to digest, and yet they communicate the important findings of their own life's work. These people work on those issues for 30, 40, 50 years. And a lot of times, 90% of our papers in education do not mention the names of those people. Some people say Jack Panksepp. Jack Panksepp comes to my mind. It's the name of a professor that I mentioned as I teach at my university, so I mentioned Jack Panksepp because he's a classic example. He lived, he changed the world, he died, and left absolutely no mark on education. And yet he's critical to education. But education is very limited. People quote each other. It's like when you build your house. I'm now renovating my apartment in Canberra. I'm asking people, why do you do these things this way? We've always done it this way. Well, I'm thinking to myself, if you've been doing this for 50 or for 70 years, maybe it's time to change. Technology has changed. Our tastes have changed. So if you want to answer to yourself whether the questions, or explore whether the questions we ask are the right questions, then we need to expose ourselves to interdisciplinary evidence, to these speakers from cognitive science, neuroscience, anywhere else, whatever interests you. YouTube is there with them talking, with these presenters talking quite a lot. There is no lack of lectures on YouTube on subjects relevant to our own work. we need to stop asking the same questions. And maybe we should raise the question, maybe someone could write a paper on the subject of why 5 million research papers on grammar and vocabulary acquisition and no effect. We're still nowhere. So same old really worries me. When you engage in the international project, are you prepared to change your mind drastically? If you find researchers with whom you collaborate who will take you out of your comfort zone, are you prepared for it? Or will you go with people who talk your language? More grammar, how to learn grammar, what's grammar? Well, I don't know what's grammar, it's rules, must be rules. We always have said that grammar is rules. Did you look anywhere else for evidence to make you think of grammar in a richer way? Which richer means with more evidence, with more clues? No. Right. So how is research therefore contributing to the main body of knowledge? You know, we have this peripheral knowledge. I call it professional knowledge. I might be wrong, but that's what I call it. But the professional knowledge sits on a thick stem of a tree, and I call it the main body of knowledge. There is your Einstein, there is your Max Planck, there is the people who created breakthrough in medicine, in cognitive sciences, and so on. How are we contributing to this? Some people may say it's not our job. It's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of evidencing your view. At this very moment, education is treated by serious sciences as not important. It's because we do not make a case or are somehow limited in our capacity to demonstrate that we can contribute and we should contribute to the main body of knowledge. Now, these are the questions that you may ask of yourself when you engage with your collaborators. How is your research project to contribute to the main body of knowledge? Or are we still repeating the knowledge that was created in 1970s or 1950s, and just regurgitating someone famous? That's not research. That's just application for the sake of doing something. So professional knowledge for me is working. So what constitutes our professional knowledge? So this is the if our professional knowledge is based on limited scope of whereby we ignore much of interdisciplinary evidence, whereby we do not contribute much to the main body of knowledge, then what is it that we have? Just narrative. Or if you do this, that could work. If you do this, that might good things might happen, but that's not professional knowledge. That's just gossip. Right. Professional knowledge is based on evidence, thick body of knowledge. There's a lot of work that is ahead of us, and most of all, we need to ask ourselves ethical questions. Who's benefiting from our work? And when we ask ourselves these questions, like who's benefiting from our work, I suggest that before you engage in your international project, you write 2 pages on all these questions that I just outlined, and maybe other questions, so that you have a pretty good understanding why you're engaging with particular parties. Otherwise, it could be a waste of time for everybody. So I think that this is important. I'm not sure whether my collaborators on the Cambodian project are watching this particular presentation, but certainly they will watch sometime later. And I have to tell you, maybe some of you have engaged in the international projects and you already can relate to these questions. but I can tell you that my people are certainly feeling the pain, but can relate as a result. Life is challenges. Challenges present us with pain, but that pain and overcoming of pain creates the content. We are contentful now, and that content is our references now that enable us to understand, for example, questions which I have written up now. So I strongly suggest for you yourselves to spend serious time asking of yourselves these questions. The answers to those questions will give you a good motivation and also a good direction for future. So it is a complicated table. I'm not even sure whether myself and my PhD student, when we created it, whether we actually did it well. Nonetheless, what this complicated picture shows we had senior respondents, see the orange arrow. We had senior respondents in our research project and also school teachers. And typically in a qualitative study, people collect what people said, and then they group those things, what people said. We've done it in a different way, but we've done it. But we also looked at something else. If you looked in the column of senior respondents, and then you look at research, underneath there is this yellow arrow and it says research, you will notice that in terms of research as an issue, senior respondents referred only to each other, ELT researchers, and to the ministry. It would never occur to them to address teachers and talk about teachers and exemplify the projects in schools. This research was done in Cambodia. So it is as clear as a bell here for me that senior respondents were not able in their responses to demonstrate that they are actually actively working with school teachers and with schools. I am not saying they are not, but from our interviews, that's what emerged. This is very interesting. So what are the English language teacher researchers researching? Well, let's have a look at the senior respondents. Let's stay with senior respondents and look at the column with community. That was community engagement. Right? So senior respondents are not thinking of teachers when it comes to research, but when it comes to community engagement, they say, oh, it's just teacher's job. Teacher's job. We have nothing to do with community engagement. That's teacher's job. Teachers, if you go to teachers now column, which is the orange arrow that points to teachers, you will notice that in terms of community engagement, teachers were saying it's the ministry job. We're not going to argue here at this very moment whose job it is. But you yourselves may already think that in between are the students, right? The little kids in schools, where the researchers and policymakers think community engagement is someone else's job, and then teachers think it's someone else's job. I don't know who's benefiting from it, but I know who is losing here. Sorry for the birds, it's really loud here. The birds came out to my garden now. Okay, so next. So I'm moving closer and closer to Cambodia. Cambodia has this new national curriculum, as most countries actually in Southeast Asia do. That's because of the pressure, international pressure and the ASEAN pressure. So we've got all of these words, all is cool. We have transformative goals in the curriculum. I still need to see a publication written by a Cambodian scholar where the concept of the transformative goals is explained and related to the national curriculum. Because the fact that senior respondents do not appear to be doing much work in schools demonstrates or coincides with the fact that when we examined the literature written by Cambodian scholars, we couldn't see any links made between what the researchers were talking about in their papers or publications and the national curriculum. It's like, oh, I'm so happy that the policies are in place, but what I'm doing is something else. So if you're free to do that, that's okay. But if you want to participate in a international project, money is involved. And that money, as in my case with Cambodia, at this very moment comes from my university. But where I'm going with this project, and my Cambodian partners, I'm not sure whether they are fully aware of it yet. Maybe I didn't communicate it well enough. But where I'm going with it is to now next ask for funding of my government. And my government will not support something that I thought out by myself that has nothing to do with international objectives or with the national objectives of Cambodia. Because if you are independent, then fund yourself. Fund your research yourself. Basically, it's the idea, or find some private donor. So in terms of the national curriculum and, say, for example, English teaching, has the concept of full citizen fitting in our jobs of preparing us teaching English in schools? Has the job of preparing students to be full citizens? It's not a simple answer as saying, oh, well, they will be learning English, so that will make them full citizens. So there's a Professor Yazid Bastomi in Indonesia, and he was on the panels, PhD panels with me for my students, and he made a very good comment based on his own research, actually, that a lot of times, whether you are a researcher or whether you are a student researcher, people say something like, oh, this research will help. Hopefully it will help people to do this and this. Hopefully it will help. No evidence, no content underneath it, no justification. It's just hopefully it will help. Or hopefully if students learn English, we believe it should make them full citizens. These are empty concepts. You need to put some meat underneath that statement. So what makes them full citizens? Just because they can prattle in English? Can they prattle in English? A lot of my colleagues, myself, you might be in Australia for 30, 40 years and you prattle in English with lots of mistakes, and you are a full citizen. There's a lot of people who prattle in English very well and are not full citizens. That needs reflection. I've spent myself at least 10 years or more thinking about concepts like skills, critical thinking. What does critical thinking mean? Is critical thinking about logic? Maybe critical thinking has nothing to do with logic. These are the questions we need to. We cannot just say critical thinking is about thinking critically. We need to explain. This is what V.S. Ramachandran from US, the neuroscientist, what he's saying. You cannot explain a concept with its synonym. You need to put a process there. You need to explain a concept with a process. So what's the process of critical thinking? Where did you get it from? What evidence did you draw on? Is this evidence interdisciplinary? Most people would say, most key neuroscientists would say that critical thinking has nothing to do with logic. And if it does, you are psychotic. So they would say logic, if you function by logic alone, you make decisions which are not beneficial to you or your community. You are psychotic. You cannot put your life together. Something to think about. But it will not fall from the sky. You have to study that. What does it mean for learning English to benefit you personally, your family, and the society? Has this reflected in our lesson designs, in our curricula, in our assignment designs? I don't have much time to go into this. I think that alone deserves a whole keynote. So this is the project we have here. I didn't put in this project yet Niri Ri on that slide because Niri Ri from the Institute of National Institute of Education came much later into the project. So we have four core people in the research team: myself, my doctoral student, Professor Ania Lian, and also Ms. Niri Ri. You will see her soon. I mentioned her on the next slide. And we also have a consultative groups, which is Dr. Veera No. He's the director of the National Institute of Education, deputy director, specializing in English education. Dr. Kirk Narit and Dr. Sof Sok. So these people are consultants. So we refer to them. They have knowledge of the context in Cambodia, and we share with them what we plan to do, how we plan to do, why we plan to do it. They give us some ideas themselves. So they are our reference group. So we do have a website. Anyone who is on my Facebook would have probably some time ago actually seen the link to this page. So teacher Niri is responsible for the group which we call the experimental group. There's also a control group in our project, and there's me and Professor Ania Lian. And if you ask me, I have no idea until now how many students we have in the experimental group. You would think I would know. Well, I probably would if I asked teacher Niri, but these are the sort of issues that come up with international collaboration. In Cambodia, things are very fluid. Now, Cambodia was stressed by the impact of COVID. Things became even more fluid. You never knew when the project will start, whether the project will start in a sense of whether the group in Cambodia was ready for it, how many students, and so on and so on and so on. So we went along with the project, kind of jumping into it and thinking things will sort themselves out as we move on. So that's our team. Oh, and we have a website here. I'm just going to have a look at the next slide. So on this website, this website is not the website where students submit their assignment. It's the website which I created for our students to have links to activities that the website that our course, our collaboration together offers. The objective of the collaboration is very interesting. So typically in Cambodia, these are future senior school teachers. They will teach English. So typically they have the 1 year, which consists of many subjects and prepares them for schools. So this semester they will be doing a particular thing. However, because of trust in our group between myself and Professor Lian and Nami Lor from my former PhD student. So what happened, because I have had a very long relationship with Cambodia through course, I used to be a mentor of a cohort that came to my university from Cambodia to complete the coursework, master's coursework in education. So I developed a lot of good long-term relationships till today. I developed trust, not just with those students, but also with the ministry, because they could see that how I work with people, how much how my ex-students felt about me. They could see that I had a long-term vision for those students and for schools and for Cambodia. So through different interactions, through working together, through giving presentations, through small projects, through PhD projects and so on, a lot of things happened before the ministry and before the National Institute of Education decided to blindly jump into a project with me and my university, despite an enormous culture change that the project generated. I was reading the reflection of teacher Neri on the collaboration that she quite neatly prepared for this presentation, and in the shared theme of her reflection was she had no idea where it was going, no idea what assignments meant. The assignments were written up, everything that was involved. We have like 15-page description of students can expect in the unit, what's the job of a teacher, what's the job of assessment, what's the job of everything, learning outcome, everything spelled out. And yet, these were just words. Teacher Neri has not experienced anything like that. She must have been under an enormous stress because she's responsible for the success of all the future teachers in her unit, in that experimental group. We can do whatever we do, but then she has to go to those students and make sure that those students can progress. And so the responsibility is really on her. As much as Professor Andrew Lian and myself are helping and teaching and providing assistance, as they say, the buck stops with her. She is the one that if students feel unhappy with their participation in the project, she will be responsible. So the stress was enormous. The cultural change was enormous. And I'll talk more about it. So you've got different things. So we have a teaching plan there on the website. If you can actually see the menu, we have lecture recordings, everything that happens in our online meetings, because we're teaching online, everything is online. Everything is recorded, and those recordings from Zoom are then uploaded on YouTube, and the links the links are posted there. Someone has raised a hand. Should I ask the person what they want to say?
It's just me, the MC, and I just want to remind you of the time. Yes.
How much more do I have?
Basically, within the past 5 minutes, so maybe you can wrap up.
Okay, so I'll just but if you look, do you see the red arrow on the bottom? So not all students are present in our online meetings. So I recommend to students not only to participate in the meetings, but those who couldn't participate in our Zoom meeting to Go to those recordings, watch them, like my students in Australia do. But if you look underneath this title, website analysis, there's only one view. One person was there. I don't know, maybe it was even me, right? So there is no follow-up. So I'm not sure whether all students were present in that particular class, but I can only see that the students didn't actually view this particular video, but it is there. But they produce good things. So our students were to produce websites and do stuff on those websites and whatever they were doing. The point I wanted to make, that despite the challenges, students started producing websites and engage in the unit and in the assessment task in the most creative way. Look at this, welcome to life. And life is like this, just experiences, which is the notes, right? This happened, this happened, this happened. So we're very happy with students' progress, quite astonished how well they adjusted, but I would have liked to see more participation. So to wrap up, basically, I think that the main thing from our chat today that I wanted to emphasize is that to benefit from an international project, you need to understand yourself in it first, because then you can critically engage with the method of teaching, with the thing, what, why and what. Our purpose in this particular project with Cambodia is for our students to experience a new way of learning English, and when we actually teach them, as we teach, we make connections to the national curriculum so that our future teachers can see how whatever activity, what the activities they do, how they connect to the national curriculum, and they can actually now understand better the words in the national curriculum. So, and we also make connections to the implications for practice. So when you're in school, you can do this and that. This is what it might mean. These are the things that are implied. So it's basically the goal of the project is for our students to experience a new way or a different way of learning English on their own skin, so that when they go to schools, they have a better understanding of these transformative policies that are outlined in the new national curriculum of Cambodia. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Ania Lian, for the insightful presentation on challenges when doing international projects and on the same old topic over the past 30 years in teaching languages. We believe that through your sharing, educators in this conference already have an overview of doing international projects and ways to navigate and manage both personal expectations and project objectives. Obviously, there is a huge gap in understanding roles between different stakeholders. Thus, just through understanding the big picture and see the roles and connections between people in charge of each part of the model you presented, then we can help our learners become full citizens. I just want to quickly show you your certificates. So this is the certificate for you today, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you kindly.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, now please join the parallel sessions matching your interests following the links we provided. Hope to see you all again at 3:50 when we welcome Professor Joseph Kopiet and with his keynote address on motivational task design for language learning in multimodal environments. See you soon at 3:50.